Hello everyone, I'm here for Fiiber buying day today and welcome to the battery drain test comparison between the Poco F6 and the Realme GT60. Now, truth be told, these are two of the most competitively priced mid-range smartphones with top-tier hardware. So on your screens are the prices and variants of both phones, and by the looks of it, you'd straight off say that the Poco F6 is clearly the better priced between the two. Well, don't jump the gun so fast, because if we include the 3000 rupees instant bank discount on the Realme, look closely, the 8GB plus 256GB variant and the 12GB plus 256GB versions of both phones get in the same price bracket. Of course, when it comes to the 512GB versions, the Poco is still cheaper by 3000 rupees than the Realme. But if you ask me, if you're planning to get a smartphone and your choices are narrowed down between these two smartphones, I would say to consider the 256GB versions of both these phones, because on a whole, 256GB storage is still a lot of storage. And honestly, who needs a 512GB storage? Like, you let me know in the comments, do you even need 512GB storage on your smartphone? In the comments, all your thoughts. Anyway, now that you have an idea of the prices, here's a look at the key specifications on offer, and I have to say, both phones are totally decked out. Of course, Realme does have some perks in the form of a curved display, which is brighter on paper than the Poco F6. The Realme also has a glass rear panel, a slightly better IP rating, and a substantially larger 5500 mAh battery with faster 120-watt charging. So for about the same money, which phone out of the two would make more sense for you if performance and endurance are two of the key selling points? Now, of course, before we go ahead, consider hitting that red subscribe button for detailed tech videos, and also turn on the bell so that you don't miss any of our latest updates. With that said, let's get started. As always, we kick off by booting up both devices, and they boot neck to neck. So both phones on the table have light mode enabled and are connected to the same Wi-Fi network. The brightness and audio are set at 50%, vivid color profile is set, all the image and video enhancement settings are enabled, 120Hz mode is enabled, and of course, both the phones' batteries are 100% and discharged. Starting off with the YouTube video playback test, and right off the bat, let me tell you, both phones have sharp and vibrant panels. Of course, for a vibrant viewing experience, as I mentioned, I have set the screen color profile to vivid on both, but Realme is clearly taking away the win here as far as the color and brightness are concerned. You see, while I won't even touch upon the 6000 nits peak brightness of the Realme, and I don't even have the content to take advantage of that crazy brightness, what I do know is that when it comes to typical and high brightness mode, the Realme surely boasts better numbers, and it's not even funny. If you set the brightness manually, the difference is evident. The Realme is more brighter and vibrant. In fact, even with auto brightness in harsh sunlight too, while both phones performed admirably, I would still give the edge to Realme, because overall it is simply the brighter screen on paper as well as in the real world. Now, don't get me wrong, the Poco F6 also has a gorgeous display, but it's just when you compare it to the GT60, you'll know which one is better. It is the Realme GT60's screen. On a practical note, I would have loved if Realme had used a flat display like the Poco F6 on the GT60, but I guess that's a story for another time. For now, we are done with the 2 hours of YouTube video playback, and to no surprise, with the bigger battery, the GT60 has taken the lead with 95% battery left, while the Poco F6 is now left with 90% battery. With that, it is now time to run an hour of 1080p video recording, and while both phones are at it, here's a look at the camera specifications of both devices. The Poco F6 features a dual rear camera system featuring a 50 megapixel IMX882 primary camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 20 megapixel snapper at the front for selfies. Video recording is capped at 4K 60 FPS from the rear camera and 1080p 60 FPS from the front camera. The Realme GT60 on the other hand also has a dual rear camera setup comprising a 50 megapixel Sony LYT600 primary sensor, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle sensor and a 32 megapixel snapper at the front for selfies. In terms of video recording, the rear camera is capped at 4K 60 FPS while the front supports up to 4K 30 FPS recording. Now here are some of the comparison photos of the Poco F6 and the Realme GT60 side by side. Let me know in the comments which phone you think took the better shot. Of course, for a detailed overview of the camera, the individual reviews of both phones are live on Fiiber and I will also leave the video links in the description below. With that, we are now done with the 1080p video recording round as well. 3 hours have gone in total and currently the Realme GT60 is still in the lead with 78% battery left while the Poco F6 is now left with 72% battery. Let's move on to the next round. Alrighty, time to run some benchmarks to get an idea if both phones are put under heavy loads in the real world, which one is going to give the better endurance. First up, the specs. The Poco F6 has the Snapdragon 8s Gen 3 chip under the hood coupled with up to 12GB LPDDR5X RAM and 512GB UFS 4.0 storage. The Realme GT60 on the other hand is powered by the new Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 3 SoC coupled with up to 12GB LPDDR5X RAM and 512GB UFS 4.0 storage. Starting with Geekbench 6 and in both single core and multi-core performance, the Realme GT60 easily pulls up ahead of the Poco F6. In Antutu as well, the Realme GT60 manages to take the lead with a good 1 lakh plus margin. That said, the scores of both phones are pretty solid for being mid-range smartphones. However, things get tricky in the 3D Mark Extreme Stress Test where the Poco F6 scores a solid 90.8% stability versus Realme's 54.2%, suggesting the Poco F6 should be a better phone when it comes to gaming in the real world. More on this in a bit. Finally, in the CPU throttle test, after all the torture in the previous 3 benchmarks, both phones recorded a pretty good stability score of 84%. So here are the benchmark scores of both phones on your screens right now. You can pause and take a look. So 4 hours are gone in total, and before we go to the gaming round, a quick look at the battery statistics. So the Realme GT60 is now left with 53% battery, it is still in the lead, while the Poco F6 is now left with 40% battery. Alright, there's no doubt that both these smartphones have flagship grade chipsets and both phones can run any of the graphically demanding titles available for phones. The thing is, and where I find the 3D Mark Extreme Stress Test results a bit out of place, is that while the score suggests that in long-term use, the GT60 won't be able to deliver a sustained gaming performance. However, in the real world and after having tested both phones, what I can tell you is that while both phones can play all the top games available, when it comes to thermal management, the Realme GT60 is better by a long shot. In fact, after the benchmarks round, both the phones got quite hot, but it was the Realme that was the first one to drop the temperature levels to a normal state, while the Poco F6 took its sweet time in cooling down. So as I said, while the performance of both phones is solid, thermal management on the whole is better on the Realme GT60, and this is why I think it is the better phone for gaming. Okay, so 5 hours have passed in total. We are done with the gaming round, and currently the Realme GT60 is still in the lead with 43% battery left, while the Poco F6 is now left with 30% battery. With that, we are in the last leg of our battery drain test comparison. I will now run an hour of Instagram on both smartphones here, but without keeping you waiting until the last minute, I am going to fast forward to the 6 hours mark. And with that, the Realme GT60 finishes with 36% battery left, while the Poco F6 finishes with 18% battery left. Here's an hour-by-hour breakdown of the battery drain of both phones on your screens right now. So looking at the battery drains chart, the Realme surely proved it's more efficient in video playback, although Poco's performance is also pretty decent. The video recording round does give the lead to Poco, but again, the scores are pretty neck to neck. Similarly, in the gaming round, while the Poco does fare well, Realme's performance is also good, and it could have been the other way around too. Most importantly, in benchmarks and social media rounds, Realme once again showed what a proper lead looks like. So while the Poco F6 efficiency is pretty decent in terms of 5000 mAh battery phone, the Realme GT60 fared superior. Of course, one can argue that it has a larger battery too, and granted it does, But along with the big battery, its efficiency is solid, meaning under moderate use, you can easily score 2 days of battery life from the phone. And with moderate to heavy use, an easy 1 day or even 1.5 days of endurance is possible. On top of it, the thermal management is also far better on the Realme GT 60. Rest, what do you guys think of this battery drain test comparison between the Poco F6 and the Realme GT 60? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, for all the latest in tech, stay tuned to Fiiber. I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you for watching.